Pixie, the Lego Fairy, and the Great Tower of Time. Segment 1. The Heart of the Toy Kingdom. When the last yawn echoed through the quiet house and the last sleepy sigh drifted from the children's room, that's when the magic truly began. As the moonbeams painted silver stripes across the carpet, the toys of the Toy Kingdom stirred. From under the bed to the top shelf of the bookcase, a secret world word clicked and softly came to life. And at the heart of this world, tiny but vibrant, was Pixie. Pixie wasn't just any fairy. She was a Lego fairy built with shimmering, translucent bricks that sparkled like captured starlight. Her wings, made of delicate blue and green Lego plates, fluttered with an almost silent hum. Her most important job, the one she loved more than anything, was tending to the Great Tower of Time. This magnificent structure, built from countless interlocking toy parts and nestled in the corner of the playroom, wasn't just a clock. It was the very pulse of the Toy Kingdom, ensuring that every toy woke, played, and rested exactly when they should. If the tower faltered, toy time would crumble into a muddled mess. Every night, Pixie performed her vital rounds, checking each gear and spring, her heart full of dedication to her wonderful, busy world. Segment 2. A faint, unsettling tremor. Tonight, Pixie began her patrol as usual, her tiny Lego boots barely making a sound on the smooth, polished surface of the playroom floor. She flew past the sleeping race cars, their chrome bodies gleaming in the moonlight, and waved to the quiet dolls, nestled in their miniature beds. Her destination was always the same, the base of the Great Tower of Time. This colossal structure, rising almost to the ceiling, was a marvel of toy engineering. Little cogs the size of buttons spun rhythmically, and larger gears, crafted from building blocks, turned with a slow, deliberate grace. Pixie always started by inspecting the primary cog, the very first gear that transferred the gentle hum of the toy world's magic into motion. She landed softly on a nearby Lego brick platform, her small hands reaching out to feel the familiar vibrations. But as her fingers brushed against the metal, a tiny, almost imperceptible tremor ran through it. It wasn't the usual steady pulse she knew so well. A flicker of concern sparked in Pixie's bright, button-like eyes. Segment 3. The Stuck Gear. Pixie pressed her ear closer to the primary cog, a small frown creasing her delicate Lego brow. The tremor was indeed unusual, a subtle disruption in the tower's normally perfect rhythm. She followed the subtle vibration, floating higher, past the meticulously arranged Lego minifigures that stood guard on various platforms. The hum grew fainter, then seemed to stop altogether in one section. She circled a large, ornate gear, shaped like a flower with many petals, which usually spun with a gentle, mesmerizing rotation. But tonight it was completely still. A small, stubborn plastic block, no bigger than Pixie's thumb, was wedged firmly between two of its petals, preventing it from moving. This was the crucial gear, the one that powered the smaller cogs that marked the passage of toy minutes. If it remained stuck, the entire Great Tower of Time would gradually slow, then halt, plunging the Toy Kingdom into timeless chaos. Pixie knew she had to act quickly. The dawn, and the children's waking, would be here sooner than she thought. Segment 4. A tiny tug, a big problem. With determination shining in her eyes, Pixie immediately set about trying to dislodge the offending plastic block. She braced her tiny Lego feet against the stationary gear and pushed with all her might. Her delicate fairy muscles strained, Her translucent wings fluttered with effort, but the block remained stubbornly wedged. She tried prying it with a stray toothpick she found, then pulling at it with both hands, but it wouldn't budge. The block was just too firmly stuck, a stubborn obstacle in the intricate machinery of time. A tiny bead of sweat, no bigger than a dewdrop, appeared on her Lego brow. This wasn't a job for one tiny fairy, no matter how determined. The Great Tower of Time was too important, and the problem too big for her alone. She realized, with a sigh, that she would need help, and quickly. She knew just the kind of toys who could provide the unique strength and cleverness needed for such a task. Segment 5. The Loyal Soldiers. Pixie knew exactly where to go first. The Great Tower of Time stood near the sturdy toy chest, where the tiny soldiers slept in perfect rows. These were not just ordinary army men. They were the guardians of order, always ready to lend a hand or a plastic rifle to those in need. With a determined flutter of her wings, Pixie zipped across the polished floor, the moonlight guiding her path. She landed softly on the edge of the toy chest and peered inside. There they were, rows and rows of green and tan figures, their painted eyes wide even in slumber. She carefully nudged General Green, the oldest and wisest of the soldiers, who wore a tiny, scuffed helmet. His plastic eyelids fluttered open, then his painted mouth stretched into a wide yawn. "Pixie? What's the matter, little one? Is it time for morning drills already?" he mumbled, his voice a low, rumbling plastic sound. Segment 6. An Urgent Call to Arms. "No, General Green, it's far more serious," Pixie exclaimed, her voice a rapid, anxious whisper. She quickly explained the stuck gear, the fading hum of the tower, and her inability to move the stubborn plastic block. General Green's painted eyes, usually so calm, widened with alarm. He knew the grave importance of the Great Tower of Time. Without it, the delicate balance of the toy kingdom would collapse. Toys might wake up at the wrong time, or not at all, disrupting playtime and leading to utter confusion. A deep sense of duty settled upon his plastic features. "A stuck gear, you say? And a crucial one," he murmured, a rare tremor in his usually steady voice. He sat up straight, instantly shedding the last vestiges of sleep. "This is an emergency of the highest order. Soldiers, attention," he bellowed, his voice suddenly strong and clear, echoing through the quiet toy chest. The other tiny soldiers, roused by their general's urgent tone, began to stir, their plastic bodies rustling as they prepared to face whatever challenge lay ahead. Segment 7. The Soldiers' Readiness. At General Green's command, a ripple of movement spread through the toy chest. Tiny plastic limbs stretched, small painted heads swiveled, and the soft clinking of their miniature rifles could be heard. Sergeant Stripes, a stern but reliable figure with a slightly chipped hat, was the first to fully awaken, snapping to attention with a sharp click. "Ready for duty, General," he declared, his voice crisp and military-like. A murmur of agreement went through the ranks, a collective sense of purpose replacing their sleepy states. These soldiers were built for action, for solving problems with precision and force, and the thought of the Great Tower of Time failing filled them with a grim determination. Pixie watched them, a spark of hope igniting within her. Their readiness, their unwavering loyalty, filled her with a sense of relief. She knew that if anyone could help dislodge the stubborn block, it would be these brave, dedicated, tiny soldiers. The general turned to Pixie, his expression now firm. "Lead the way, Pixie. Show us this obstruction." Segment 8. The Ascent and Initial Assessment. With renewed hope, Pixie led General Green and a small squad of the most agile tiny soldiers across the moonlit floor. Their plastic boots made soft, rhythmic taps as they marched towards the imposing silhouette of the Great Tower of Time. Pixie, fluttering ahead, guided them to the lower levels where the larger gears hummed, or rather, should have been humming. She landed on the platform beside the silent, flower-shaped gear. The soldiers, with surprising agility for their small size, scaled the smooth Lego bricks of the tower, using their tiny rifle butts as makeshift climbing tools until they reached Pixie's level. General Green peered at the offending plastic block, his painted brow furrowed in concentration. His initial reaction was a grim nod. "You were right, Pixie," he said, his voice quiet but firm. "This is a formidable obstruction. Our usual pushing tactics might not be enough." Sergeant Stripes, ever practical, took out a tiny, magnifying glass-like lens from his utility belt and examined the stuck block closely, a look of deep concern etched on his miniature face. Segment 9. The First Attempt and a New Plan. General Green surveyed the situation with a strategist's eye. "Sergeant Stripes, assemble a detachment. We'll try a synchronized push," he ordered. 3 of the strongest-looking soldiers positioned themselves around the stubborn block, their plastic shoulders braced against the gear's pedals. At General Green's sharp count of 1, 2, 3, they pushed with all their collective might. Their plastic bodies strained, and their painted faces showed grim effort, but the block remained unmoving, as if it were glued in place. A collective sigh of frustration rippled through the small group. Pixie's heart sank slightly. Even their combined strength wasn't enough. General Green, though disappointed, quickly recovered. He tapped his helmet thoughtfully. "Brute force alone won't suffice here," he announced, his voice thoughtful. "This calls for precision. Pixie, do we have any toys in the kingdom known for their intricate tools or their ability to mend delicate things? Someone who understands small mechanisms." A new idea began to form in Pixie's mind, a flicker of hope returning. Segment 10. A Whispered Name. Professor Albert. Pixie's eyes lit up. "Professor Albert," she exclaimed, her voice filled with a fresh surge of optimism. "He knows everything about tiny springs and complex clockwork." Professor Albert was a wise, old stuffed owl who resided high on the bookshelf, surrounded by dusty storybooks and discarded spectacles. He wasn't the strongest nor the fastest, but his mind was sharper than any toy knife, and his talons, though soft and plush, were surprisingly nimble with small parts. He was the Toy Kingdom's resident inventor and repair specialist, known for his meticulous patience and endless supply of forgotten screws and gears. The thought of him, with his perpetually surprised look and vast knowledge, brought a warm feeling to Pixie's Lego chest. The atmosphere, which had been tense with the soldiers' failed attempt, now shifted, imbued with the quiet confidence of a new, more refined plan taking shape. General Green nodded, a faint smile on his painted face. "Professor Albert it is. Sergeant Stripes, prepare the climbing ropes. This calls for a reconnaissance mission." Segment 11. Journey to the Scholar's Perch. With a newfound purpose, Pixie fluttered ahead, leading General Green and Sergeant Stripes away from the silent tower. The playroom, once a scene of quiet urgency, now felt like a grand, Moonlit expedition. The shadows stretched long and thin, transforming familiar objects into mysterious landscapes. They navigated past the slumbering train set, its tracks glinting faintly, and skirted around a giant, plush elephant. Its trunk curled peacefully. The air itself seemed to hum with anticipation, a subtle tension underlying the calm of the night. Pixie, despite her small size, felt a surge of determination. She knew the way to Professor Albert's perch, a towering stack of worn, colorful books that reached almost to the ceiling. As they approached, the scent of old paper and dust, mingled with a faint aroma of forgotten pencil shavings, grew stronger. This was the scholar's domain, a place of quiet wisdom, and for Pixie, a beacon of hope in their race against toy time. The soldiers, ever disciplined, marched steadily, their plastic faces reflecting a mixture of curiosity and unwavering resolve. Segment 12. Professor Albert's Sanctuary. The ascent to Professor Albert's perch was a mini-adventure in itself. Sergeant Stripes, ever efficient, deployed thin, braided shoelace ropes, securing them to the spines of the larger books. General Green, with surprisingly nimble movements, led the climb, his plastic feet finding purchase on the worn covers. Pixie, of course, simply flew, hovering nearby, her wings beating a soft, reassuring rhythm. The higher they climbed, the quieter the playroom became, the ambient hum of the toy kingdom fading into a hushed reverence for the scholarly domain. Finally, they reached the top, a cozy plateau where Professor Albert, a magnificent, fluffy owl with large spectacles perched on his beak, was indeed fast asleep, nestled amidst a pile of miniature gears and tiny screwdrivers. A faint, contented hoot escaped him as he dreamt. The moonlight filtered through a nearby window, illuminating his soft, brown feathers, giving the whole scene a peaceful, almost magical glow. Pixie felt a wave of calm wash over her, knowing they were now in the presence of true expertise. Segment 13. Waking the Wise One. Gently, Pixie landed on Professor Albert's soft, plush head, careful not to disturb the spectacles balanced precariously on his beak. General Green and Sergeant Stripes arrived on the plateau, their breathing shallow, respectful of the sleeping scholar. The quiet hooting continued, a comforting, rhythmic sound. Pixie, with a tiny, hopeful sigh, leaned in and whispered, "Professor Albert? Professor, the great tower of time needs you." She repeated her plea, a little louder this time, her voice tinged with a delicate urgency. One of the professor's large, amber eyes slowly blinked open, then the other. He let out a soft "hoo" of sleepy confusion, his spectacles slipping slightly down his beak. He adjusted them with a fumbling, plush talon, his gaze eventually focusing on the miniature Lego fairy and the grim-faced soldiers. A sudden realization seemed to dawn on him, and his eyes, now wide awake, reflected a flicker of alarm. The tower? Oh, dear. Oh, dear. What has happened? His voice, usually slow and measured, now had an uncharacteristic tremor of concern. Segment 14. The gravity of the situation. Professor Albert quickly sat upright, his plush feathers ruffling with genuine worry. The comfortable, dusty atmosphere of his sanctuary suddenly felt charged with a serious, urgent energy. He listened intently as Pixie, her small body trembling slightly with the lingering anxiety, rapidly explained the problem: the stubborn plastic block, the silent gear, and the impending disarray of toy time. General Green added his observations, confirming the immovability of the obstruction. Professor Albert stroked his beak thoughtfully, his bright eyes darting between Pixie and the soldiers, then towards the distant, dark silhouette of the great Tower of Time. His initial alarm transformed into a deep, scholarly concern. A complete halt to the minute cog? Unthinkable. This is indeed a grave matter, he stated, his voice now crisp with purpose, though still retaining a hint of his usual learned gravitas. The delicate balance of the toy kingdom rests on the steady tick of that tower. We must proceed with utmost care and precision. The weight of his words settled upon the small group, a solemn understanding of the critical task ahead. Segment 15. The Professor's Preparations. With a renewed sense of urgency, Professor Albert began to stir, his soft, fluffy body now brimming with focused energy. He carefully picked up a tiny magnifying glass, larger and more powerful than Sergeant Stripes, and meticulously cleaned its lens with a soft feather from his own wing. Then, with surprising speed, he rummaged through the small piles of miniature tools scattered around his perch. He selected a pair of tweezers, fine as a spider's silk, and a miniature oil can no bigger than Pixie's head. His expression was one of intense concentration, a calm resolve replacing his earlier alarm. The air in his study, previously still, now hummed with the quiet rustle of his movements and the anticipation of his genius at work. Pixie watched him, a knot of worry in her Lego chest beginning to loosen. General Green and Sergeant Stripes stood at respectful attention, their plastic faces reflecting their faith in the professor's abilities. The moon outside had shifted slightly, its light still strong but a faint pre-dawn glow hinting at the approaching morning. Every passing moment was precious. Segment 16. Return to the Tower of Time. Professor Albert, now fully prepared, tucked his chosen tools securely into a tiny satchel made from a discarded sock. His usually gentle, thoughtful expression was replaced with one of profound determination. To the tower, then, he declared, his voice firm and resonant. Pixie, her spirits significantly lifted, zipped ahead, a tiny beacon of hope leading the way. The soldiers, reinvigorated by Professor Albert's calm confidence, descended from the bookshelf with renewed purpose, their movements swift and silent across the moonlit floor. The air felt colder now, imbued with the chill of late night, and the silence of the playroom seemed deeper, amplifying the faint, unsettling stillness of the great Tower of Time. They marched back towards the imposing structure, its silent silhouette looming larger than before. The mission, no longer just a desperate plea, was now a coordinated effort, a unified front against the impending chaos. Pixie felt a surge of collective strength, a comforting warmth spreading through her translucent Lego bricks. Together, they would face this challenge. Segment 17. The Professor's Keen Eye. Upon reaching the Great Tower of Time once more, Professor Albert, with a solemn nod, accepted a boost from Sergeant Stripes onto the platform beside the stalled gear. The large, flower-shaped cog remained stubbornly silent, casting a long, still shadow. The professor, his large, amber eyes gleaming behind his spectacles, immediately produced his magnifying glass. He meticulously scrutinized the tiny, brightly colored plastic block that held the magnificent gear captive. The moonlight, now nearing its descent, provided a stark, silvery illumination, highlighting every minuscule detail of the mechanism. Professor Albert moved his head slowly, from one side of the obstruction to the other, his brow furrowed in deep concentration. He noticed a tiny, almost invisible ridge on one side of the roadblock and a faint, microscopic chip on the edge of the gear's pedal. "Aha," he hooted softly, a triumphant gleam in his eyes. "The friction is not uniform. This little fellow has found a most cunning lodging point. Force alone would only damage the delicate mechanism. This requires finesse." Pixie watched, her heart thumping with a mix of anticipation and relief, as the professor's keen mind swiftly deciphered the problem. Segment 18. Precision and Collaboration. General Green, Professor Albert directed, his voice a focused whisper. "I require a steady hand to hold this side of the gear, just so, to prevent any shifting when I apply pressure." General Green, ever ready, positioned his sturdy plastic hand precisely as instructed, his painted face grim with concentration. "Sergeant Stripes, your magnifying lens proved most useful. Now, I need you to shine a beam of moonlight, precisely there, at this minuscule point." Sergeant Stripes, with his disciplined precision, carefully angled his small, reflective badge to catch a sliver of moonlight, directing it onto the identified ridge of the stuck block. The light illuminated the tiny obstruction, making it stand out like a rogue speck. Pixie, her wings hovering gently, held her breath, her translucent body shimmering with nervous excitement. The atmosphere was incredibly tense, a silent choreography of concentration under the fading moonlight. This was not about brute strength, but about delicate touch, keen eyesight, and perfect teamwork. The fate of toy time hung in the balance, resting on this precise, collaborative maneuver. Segment 19. The Delicate Operation. Professor Albert's plush talons, usually clumsy for their size, became remarkably agile as he reached for his finest tweezers. The air was thick with a palpable tension, broken only by the soft click of the tweezers opening and closing. Guided by Sergeant Stripes' focused beam of moonlight, the professor positioned the delicate tips of the tweezers against the precisely identified ridge on the plastic block. His large, amber eyes, magnified by his spectacles, narrowed in intense focus. Pixie held her breath, her tiny Lego hands clasped together, praying for success. With a gentle, almost imperceptible wiggle and a tiny, almost inaudible snick, the professor applied just the right amount of pressure. A microscopic tremor ran through the great gear, but this time it was a tremor of release. The stubborn plastic block, with a faint pop, finally came loose from its tight lodging. A collective sigh of relief, almost imperceptible, rippled through the small assembly. Professor Albert carefully placed the freed block into his satchel, his expression one of profound satisfaction. Segment 20. The Return of Time's Harmony. As the plastic block was finally freed, a miraculous thing happened. With a soft, resonant whir, the great flower-shaped gear began to turn, slowly at first, then gaining a steady momentum. This gentle rotation sent a ripple of movement through the entire great tower of time. Tiny cogs spun, larger gears interlocked and rotated with graceful precision, and the faint, comforting hum that Pixie knew so well began to fill the playroom once more, growing stronger with each passing moment. The tense silence dissipated, replaced by the rhythmic tick-tock of restored toy time. Pixie, unable to contain her joy, zipped around the now-working gears, her transparent wings shimmering with pure delight. Professor Albert hooted softly, a wide, contented smile spreading across his plush face as General Green and Sergeant Stripes exchanged proud, relieved glances. The moonlight, now fading as the first hint of dawn painted the sky a faint rose, seemed to twinkle with approval. The toy kingdom was safe, its harmony restored, all thanks to the strength of unity and the wisdom found in unexpected places. Segment 21. The Dawn of Harmony. As the first rays of dawn stretched through the window, illuminating the dancing dust motes in the air, the toy kingdom settled back into its perfect harmony. Pixie's journey, from discovering the tiny malfunction in the great tower of time to her determined quest for help, stands as a vibrant testament to the power of cooperation. The little Lego fairy, with her brave admission of her limitations, didn't hesitate to seek out her trusted friends. The tiny soldiers showed their unwavering loyalty and strength, even in their initial unsuccessful attempt, setting the stage for the refined solution. And Professor Albert proved that intelligence, meticulousness, and deep understanding are the true keys to solving the most complex problems. The lesson from Pixie's adventure is clear. Every piece matters, and when we work together, nothing is impossible. This means that no matter how small or seemingly insignificant we may feel, each of us has a special role to play. When faced with a challenge, instead of trying to solve everything on our own, seeking help and collaborating with others who have different strengths will lead to success. Just like the gears in the Great Tower of Time, every toy, every piece, every friend is essential to keeping the world running smoothly and happily. And so, as the children woke up and tumbled into the playroom, they found their toys waiting, each one in its perfect place, ready for another day of fun. They had no idea of the magical adventure that had unfolded during the night, but thanks to Pixie and her friends, the toy world continued to tick on perfectly. Thank you for listening to the story of Pixie, the Lego Fairy, and the Great Tower of Time. I hope you have a wonderful night and beautiful dreams.